Ole Miss's out-of-state recruiting has been really good, but what's going on with the Rebels inside the state borders?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into the Portal Podcast in a crossover with Locked On Ole Miss. I'm your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football writer and recruiting analyst. Thank you for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Ole Miss your first listens each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in. We're going to be talking about what's going on with a lot of different things with Ole Miss. It's going to be centered on recruiting. And at the end, one of my favorite topics of the year, what's going on with the Phil Steele magazine. Who's read it? Just want to talk about that in preseason overlook for not just the SEC and Ole Miss, but everybody. We're also going to be talking about a back office person leaving Ole Miss, headed to LSU. We're going to be talking about in-state recruiting for the Rebels. And to lead off, we're going to be talking about Jett Goldberry, headed to Ole Miss, a player out of Indiana. To help me navigate all of this stuff, my guy, Stephen Willis. How are we doing, Stephen?
Oh, we are doing absolutely fantastic. Actually, as soon as I get off the interview here, I have an interview with Jett Goldberry, so it'll be fun to talk to him.
There you go. He's a kid just outside of Evansville. That's my home state. They don't normally produce kids like that in southern Indiana. I'll just be blunt. Watching this film was kind of funny because most of those kids have no business on the field with him. He just kind of toyed with everybody. But he's a wrestler. He's a football player. He's a quarterback. He's just an athlete. He's the kind of guy that would do one of those Marine-type challenges, those all-around competitions, swimming, biking, push-ups, all that, and probably win. So what I watched on film was comical to me because, again, the competition wasn't great. But I noticed two things. His ability to make the play after contact, whether he had the ball or he was tackling, was elite. Stephen and I spoke before the show, and that's the first thing he said. And secondarily, he's just ultra competitive. Like, he wants to physically dominate you and intimidate you with his hitting power, with his ability to make you miss. Every little thing he does, it bothers him if it's not successful. Like, he's his own worst enemy in terms of how he grades himself. You can tell by the way he does everything. He gets mad if he doesn't make the play. So, Stephen, you're telling me that he's going to end up playing safety for Ole Miss. But in your opinion, Pete Golden's defense, like, how do you think they will use him? More just top of the defense, the last guy covering the field? Do you think they'll blitz him much? What do you think they're going to do with it?
Well, I know if you look at his high school film on Huddle, the first thing you notice is he's a box safety. There's so much more of him playing against the run game than against the pass game. Yep. So it would make sense that Pete Golding put him near the line of scrimmage in some capacity, but he's 6 foot, 190 pounds. You worry about durability, tackling over and over. So I think his home might be in the back end of the defense. Listen, True. This guy played quarterback on the football team. I guarantee he played shortstop when he played baseball. He was the point guard for the basketball team. Whatever you ask him to do, he's athletically able to do it. The only thing and the only reason that he's only a 4-star on 3 and he isn't as highly ranked on other services is there's a 5 next to his name instead of a 6. Whenever you're an athlete and they're not exactly sure what to do with you and you are a little bit undersized because everybody's size-speed ratio, I think the best way to handle him will be the back end of the defense because that's not going to require so many collisions and things like that. Maybe some helping with durability because he caught every snap. He played quarterback during the season, so I don't think catching the ball will be a problem. You know, much like Andy Jaffe, I like to compare compare those two players, that they're going to step on campus and be an impact player on special teams day one, and you're supposed to develop him into a starting free or strong safety. That is the job for whoever the defensive back coach is when he's back there. You know, Neighbors or Brian Brown, get those guys ready to go to play free safety because they have the athletic ability and the gifts to do it. And that is a really good position to be in because this is a little bit of a flyer, but this is a really safe flyer.
Well, he's got so much versatility. I think they could play him at nickel in certain situations or against certain teams. That was my first guess, is they're going to move him around. He's a smart kid, you can tell. Quarterback, free safety, wrestler, whatever he wants to do. He's just a good athlete anyway. But you don't put the guy behind center if he's dumb as a box of rocks. It's not how it works. So I imagine they'll play around with what his best role is. And I guarantee you he'll be one of those guys that other teams avoid at some point in his career. How long it takes him to pick up the defense, I don't know. That stuff takes care of itself. But I thought he was really good. And for the record, he plays at Heritage Hills High School. He's about 6 foot, 190 to 200 pounds, somewhere in that range. And he's a thumper. Like when he hits somebody, he is a hitter. Heritage Hills is 20 minutes from Evansville, Indiana, down there in the southwest corner of that state. It's not the greatest competition, but he dominated as he should. And they won a state championship for his team. That school should never, I know that school should never win championships in football.
He was really good. And he also loves contact, which is something that you don't see in modern football that's kind of going away. He literally seeks out contact. And if you run towards him, he's going to blow up the play. If you try to run away from him, he's going to run you down and blow up the play. I mean, that's just the benefit of what he did athletically. Like I said, he's a box safety right now. He's going to have to be developed into a back end of the defense type guy, in my opinion.
So with their defense moving forward, do you think Ole Miss is going to be even more aggressive, or do you think they're going to kind of stay where they're at over the last year or two?
I think they will continue to be aggressive because Pete Golding's DNA. First off, anybody that's an edge player should go play football for Pete Golding. He's a master of scheming, whether it's Will Anderson or Santarin Perkins, whoever it is. He is really good at scheming the outside of the defense to get into the backfield. They're going to make explosive plays and they're going to cause turnovers. So he's going to find defensive backs that are athletic enough to handle it. He's going to convert corners into safeties when he has to, and he's going to try and recruit safeties in a certain way that can handle the load. And that's what he's doing right now. We saw him last year with Cortez Thomas and Keon Young and LaDarian Clardy. The year before, I think, was Andy Jaffe. There are some really good athletes being recruited right now in the back end of that defense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think that's really what you got to do now. Everybody can throw it. I mean, let's look at it this way, Stephen. Vanderbilt could beat you with the pass last year. Vanderbilt. If you don't have defensive backs in this league, you're going to get just absolutely run off the field. So that's a really, really important part. When we come back, we're going to shift over to in-state recruiting, talk a little bit about what's going on there, why it's happening or not. I mean, however you want to look at it. And we're also going to talk about losing a back office staff member. That is next here on this crossover. Locked on Ole Miss and Locked on the Portal. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel? You can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. If you're looking for an opportunity, they got daily promotions at FanDuel, and you can always find different ways to make it fun to bet. It's easy to use. The layout's easy. I'm not the most patient guy, but FanDuel makes it easy. In a couple of clicks, you can find the game that you're looking for really easy. If you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right. Thank you once again for making Locked on the Portal and Locked on Ole Miss your first listens each and every day. We truly appreciate you coming in to check us out. Stephen, it has been a rather weird year for Ole Miss in recruiting. Mm-hmm. When you do better out of state by a landslide than you do in state, it is odd. Would you care to explain that to me? Because I don't know of another team that it's this backwards in the Division I level. What's going on with Ole Miss with in-state recruiting?
I don't know for sure, but this is what it feels like to me. You have a bunch of people that have assigned areas outside the state that's their strength, the Randall Joiners and things like that. They've been able to get really good players in that footprint. The guy that was tasked with the in-state stuff was Kelvin Bolden. He was the guy. We're going to talk about that in just a second. He left to go to LSU. And this year, for whatever reason, maybe he was, I don't know, working on this job responsibility. He doesn't seem like the type of guy that would do that, but maybe that happened. Kelvin Bolden didn't have a very good year this year. They have one commitment out of the top 16 players in the state of Mississippi in a year that Mississippi is pretty loaded. This is why Kelvin Bolden got his contract extension a couple of years ago. This year, to line up what's going on, it was so loaded. And this year being the disaster year that it is, I think it has to do a little bit with the backroom staff. They just kind of fumbled the ball a little bit. They didn't do as well as they could have done. It's one of those situations. Now, Kelvin Bolden's gone to LSU. I think at the end of the day, like when Austin Thomas left Ole Miss for LSU, it lasted about a week and a half, and then it was like he was never there to begin with. I think that's going to happen with Kelvin Bolden as well, because when you look at this position, nobody should doubt Lane Kiffin's ability to find somebody to do that role. And it shouldn't be too difficult to find somebody that can get one commitment out of the top 16 players, whenever you look at that. And so I don't doubt Lane's ability to do that. I think this is all going to blow over pretty good, but this was not a good year. He was basically given the extension for this year. He was given the title for this year, and this year has not been what everybody hoped it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me, and I've said it many times when I do crossovers with you, Stephen, for Ole Miss to be a consistently high-end level program in the SEC, I'm not worried about what they do with the skill guys. Yeah, I want, if I'm any fan, of course you want Tristan Keys and guys like that. I get that. But it's the linemen. When LSU got not one, but both of the big tackles out of Mississippi, that was my red flag. I'm like, okay, this is where Ole Miss historically has fumbled, and it's cost them in big games because they get beat in the trenches. That cannot happen. So I don't know if it's Bolden's fault or somebody else. I have no idea.
Yeah.
But if this class finishes the way it's starting, in 3 or 4 years, we're going to come back and talk about this episode and this happening because Ole Miss is going to lose games because of lost recruits. That's just how it works. It's been that way for 100 years. It's not going to change today. So which kids are you the most comfortable with saying, hey, we can flip this kid or something along that? Which of the guys do you think, like LSU is doing some work in Mississippi among others, but who else on that list do you think they got a chance to flip?
I'm interested to see Emmanuel Tucker.
He's Kiffin Albany.
Yes, he's right up the road from Oxford. Once it gets closer and into football season, we'll see exactly how that looks. Xavier McDonald, I'm going to feel good about flipping that all the way up until signing day, until the point where he probably signs with Sacramento State, but I'll feel pretty good about that. I think that Ole Miss needs to put a full court press. Whoever takes over the responsibilities for Kelvin Bolden, they need to put the full court press on Jace Matthews.
That's what I thought you were going to say, because that kid's unbelievable.
Yeah, they need to do that. But like I said, it was a weird situation. A lot of people and narratives get built up on somebody and down. I'm not a person on the backroom staff. I've seen the way the sausages have been made in recruiting, the way it goes. There's 20 people in personnel departments now. It's not one person like it was in 2005 when it was just Kent McLeod looking up the player personnel. It's 20 people now. Somebody's going to slide in if they already haven't, and they're going to hire somebody to do exactly the same thing that was done before. And honestly, Brian, if you're going to be honest with yourself about it, as long as you hire somebody with a good personality and they're fairly affable and they're willing to work hard, every school can have a Kelvin Bolden on their staff. That's what's required. You need personality. You need somebody that's affable and likable, and you need somebody that's willing to work. If you find that, you're going to be in good shape.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, Ole Miss shouldn't be that hard to sell, especially the northern half of the state. I know the Pascagoula kids and stuff. It's a little different down there. I get that, but they're missing out on some kids from northern part of the state, et cetera. And that makes me a little worried. So we'll see. as far as replacing that guy and the personnel in the back office, I know that every staff, and Saban kind of got this started. Ward only knows how many back office people he had at Alabama. It was grotesque at LSU too, but it got even worse at Bama. I'm sure Ole Miss has the money for it and all that, but I'm just here to tell people it's usually one person just has a niche because they've coached in the state or they're a famous player that decided to go into that side of the world. They have pull. Whoever that person is, Ole Miss needs to add it to their back office.
I will say this. After Kelvin Bolden's news broke, whenever that was a couple of days ago, there was a tweet that is really cryptic from Dante Moncrief that was just red and blue dots and a thinking emoji. And he is somebody that would absolutely dominate that position. Somebody that's just recently got out of the league with NFL ties all over the place. Yeah, he would be good at that.
I think that's a pretty good point to end this segment on, because that answers the question. You need somebody like that. That'd be an NFL guy, but you need somebody that the state of Mississippi is familiar with. Everybody knows who he is. If he just became a full-time trainer or anything else he did, he would kill it. So I agree with that. So when we come back, I want to talk about Ole Miss's preseason expectations, Phil Steele's magazine, just what's going on with college football. That is next here on this crossover. All right. Preseason expectations are always fun, but you take them with a grain of salt. I literally just bought Phil Steele's magazine today, right before this podcast. I've only looked at a couple teams and I haven't even touched Ole Miss's yet. But I just want to ask people in general, and I want you to comment down below on Steven's show, my show, whatever. What do you think about the preseason expectations for Ole Miss? Just generically. It could be Phil's. It could be whatever. And I buy his magazine every year. I assume Steven's probably seen it more than once or twice in his lifetime. Oh, he's got it right there sitting on his desk. Okay, there you go. There it is. There you go. I have the exact same one. The point is this. I think expectations are one thing, but because there's so much media attention, and it's podcasts like mine, podcasts like Steven's, it's not just what ESPN says or Fox or CBS or ABC. There are 1,000 of them. It means a little bit more now, in my opinion, to the players, because people they've actually been around, grown up with, from that town, etc., have an opinion on them. I think that can be really good or really bad. Some guys get motivated by it. Like Jerry Rice, a Mississippi guy, was one of the biggest jerks ever in the NFL. Like if he was mad, you knew it. They won the Super Bowl one time and he threw a fit in the locker room because he didn't get MVP of the game. Like he was that guy. But everything he used to motivate himself. Michael Jordan was the same way. Do you think that the Ole Miss players and SEC players in general care where they're ranked? I kind of think they do. I think people are more sensitive now than ever in society in general. But what do you think about that in general, Stephen?
Yeah, I think at a player level, like Austin Simmons, there's a good chance that if you picked up a magazine, you're not going to see anything about Austin Simmons other than the fact that he's taken over for Jackson Dart. There's going to be a little chip there. Sontaran Perkins, this is a guy that is a returning SEC leader in sacks and tackles for loss, and he can't get above third team all SEC preseason.
I saw that on a couple, and I'm like, what are y'all doing?
Yeah.
He's a top 10 player in the league. I'm just going to go ahead and throw that out there.
Yeah, PFF has him way up there, and what's going on. But he has a chance to legitimately compete for Defensive Player of the Year in the Southeastern Conference. They can't even get sniffed on the third team. I think that level of Ole Miss is going to help the other stuff. I think whenever you look at the team as a whole, people kind of hedge their bets on them. Let's just put them around 21. That feels like a good number. You can't be too mad because you're ranked, and 21 and 12, there's not that big of a difference in what's going on. But every time somebody talks about the playoffs, every time, they don't even mention Ole Miss. Not even at all. And I think that disrespect, they're going to be able to play that game a little bit.
Well, that's one of the reasons, and I've said it before on your show, that I'm picking Ole Miss to make the playoff this year, because I think that they're going to be motivated. The schedule's not easy, but it's not ridiculously hard either. And quite frankly, I just think that people don't realize how much talent they have at the really high-level star spots, like their tight end, receive like Caden Lee. I know who he is because I've known him since he was in high school and he played on Cam Newton's 7-on-7 team, tearing people up. I think he's going to lead the league in receptions. I haven't looked at the SEC receiver list. I bet he's not in the top 10. Yeah. I would bet you he's not. He may not be in the top 25.
But Ryan Williams is 18, and everybody's talking about that, and the Auburn wide receivers, and yeah, nobody talks about Caden Lee because Jackson Dart graduated and Trey Harris graduated, and people just assume with Ole Miss that there's going to be a natural falling back to the pack that happens. They don't know what this roster looks like for real because Ole Miss honestly doesn't play that many players. And they assume that they don't play that many players because the players aren't that good. No, they don't play that many players because tempo doesn't allow them to substitute. Yep. And because of that, you're going to come in, it's going to be the middle of September, and you're like, my goodness, Ole Miss is just killing people. And you're surprised about it. And no, this last year they had the best roster in the country, potentially. Them or Ohio State. And a lot of those dudes that are super talented, they're there, and they've been recruiting really well. Top 20 classes, top 25 classes in high school, and also being in the top 5 in the transfer portal every year. They're a really good team.
I agree. I think that Ole Miss is probably being a little undervalued in many different ways, but people being lazy with polls, Stephen, that's nothing new. Remember the old days when the coaches poll, Spurrier never figured it out. Like, he didn't care. He handed it to one of his interns to fill out. Like, that got out. That didn't go over very well, but most coaches don't want to do it. He just didn't care. Yeah. Which Stephen, I think we both know Steve's kind of a brash guy. He didn't care if anybody knew that he didn't care either, but that's another story. With Ole Miss, what do you think is going to be the most important factor for them to overachieve this year? Besides, obviously, Austin Simmons. That's the easy one. What position has to overachieve for them to make the playoff?
I don't think I think it's head coach, honestly.
If okay. You want to go that route? You want to go that route far away?
Yeah, Ole Miss has to learn how to play as the favorite. They played the slot machine a couple of times last year that got bid at Florida against LSU. They have to learn how to play as a favorite. If you can do that, they'll win 10 ball games this year.
I think that's a pretty good point. Wayne screwed up the LSU game probably as much as any game he's coached since he's been in Oxford. Like, LSU just didn't play very well that day, especially their quarterback, and they still won. When you get a chance to win in Baton Rouge, brother, we both know you must seal the deal. So that's probably going to stick in his craw the rest of his life. With that being stated, from a player perspective, obviously Perkins, Caden Lee, etc., I think they got about a half dozen guys that could end up being all conference first or second team. But for me, I think it's the center because they've got several different guys on the offensive line that have gone over the last 2 years, mixed in. I don't know, like Pettis left or right tackle, et cetera, et cetera. Which guy for you, like up front, is the key? Because if they can run the ball, we both know they're going to throw it all over the lot. Which guy is the key to the glue for the offensive line?
I think Patrick Kutas, the transfer from Arkansas, really, really good player. But if you can lock down the right side of that defense, even if you become right-handed a little bit running the football, that is ultimately good for your football team. I talked with somebody that says, like, hey, is it Diego Pounds or is it Jaden Williams on the right side? I'm still trying to iron that out. Who's going to be the right tackle? Because with Austin Simmons, right tackle becomes the important piece. Who is ambidextrous on the offensive line? Is it Diego Pounds? Is it Jaden Williams? I think him with a Patrick Kutas, if you become a little bit right-handed, that's probably a good idea. But then whoever doesn't win that job, mixing up, I think by the end of the year, not the beginning of the year, I don't think that's going to happen at the beginning of the year, but I think there's a chance that we see Devin Harper by the end of the year playing left guard, the top 100 player out of Captain Shreve in Shreveport. That seems to be the position. Bryson Sanders, he's a good guy at center. He's waited his turn. You're going to see an athletic, nasty center with Bryson Sanders, and Kutas and whoever's playing right tackle, you're going to be in good shape. It's that left guard and whoever's not playing that right tackle. If they can make it work, you have a chance to be pretty good running the ball. I think it's important to John Garrison, because the offensive line coach gets the blame for this more than anything else. But whatever happened in the running game a year ago cannot happen this year. You can't go down to the swamp and have a 5th string wide receiver playing tailback. That cannot happen. If that gets solved, if that works, they're going to be pretty good.
Yeah, that game was really weird. How that happens at an SEC program is mind-boggling. But I mean, I know they had injuries, but that was really weird. They didn't look prepared for that. But
no.
Last question for you. Defensively, the linebacker group has got Perkins, so that's low-hanging fruit. Which DB surprises and helps the Rebels make a run for the playoffs?
I think Sage Ryan, the transfer from LSU, which LSU fans love to bag on Sage Ryan. I think Sage Ryan ends up grabbing the free safety position at Ole Miss, and it just locks it down. He kind of takes over for Trey Washington and becomes a steadying influence to allow players like Jalen Braxton and Chris Graves and all the players at cornerback to actually play cornerback, because there is no Trey Amos on this team. There's good corners, but there's not a Trey Amos. You need somebody on the back end to where whoever is playing cornerback can play a little bit on edge, if that makes sense. You don't want a corner that just doesn't want to get beat. You want a corner that's wanting to pick off the ball and willing to take risk. And you only do that if you're confident on what's behind you.
That is so true. Look at LSU's defense last year. If they had a real defense, they'd have been like 11-1, but their secondary just got smoked. That's a great example of it. So I appreciate that, Stephen. Tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Locked On Ole Miss podcast. We are the most watched Ole Miss podcast around. We'd appreciate you tuning in for that. You can follow me at Locked On OM down below. And please subscribe, comment, and all that on the Ole Miss page, and we'd appreciate it very much. And Brian,
right. Go ahead.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You can find the Portal Podcast wherever you get your podcast. Take them on the go to the gym, the grocery store, anywhere else. Podbean, Spotify, Apple, and everywhere else. And, of course, on YouTube. We have been doing a little crossover today with Locked On Ole Miss. We will see you again soon.